For the first year of our daughter's life, Gracie spent 2 to 3 days a week with her grandma and papa while I returned to work part-time. One day when I arrived to pick her up from grandma daycare, I was surprised to see my mom's face wet with tears. Mom told me that while she was feeding Gracie and marveling at how much she loved this little creature, it hit her. This was how much her grandmother had loved her. Overcome with emotion, she sat, tears streaming down her face, loving her grandchild and knowing how much she had been loved. Is there anything quite like a grandmother's love? With Grandma, you get all of the love and half of the guilt. Grandmas offer affection and devotion with none of the angst or anxiety which pervades the mother-daughter relationship. Grandma's lap is always a safe place to land. Grandma listens intently to your silly stories or your deepest secrets, never rushing or shushing you. Grandmas never say no to a milkshake at midnight or waffles for dinner. They always have time for a game of Kings in the Corner. When our family moved from South Dakota to Arkansas in 1988, the most difficult thing for my mom was saying goodbye to her beloved grandmother, my great-grandma, Grandma Grace. When Grandma Grace passed away in 1994, Mom was devastated. We were in Arkansas, more than 600 miles away, and had to drive all day and through the night to get to South Dakota for the funeral. Mom cried the whole way. Actually, she did more than cry. Bawl, sob, boo-hoo, blubber. None of these words really do justice. Do you know what a caterwaul is? Now that is an apt description. When we arrived in Sioux Falls, well past midnight, mind you, we went directly to the funeral home. The minuscule man on overnight duty appeared at the door in a disheveled state. We had clearly roused him from sleep. He asked us to wait a moment while he prepared the room and opened Grandma Grace's casket for viewing. Together, Mom and Dad, my little brother, my husband, and I made the long walk down the narrow hallway into the dimly lit visitation room. I remember taking one glance at Grandma Grace in the casket and burying my head in my husband's shoulder. Let's just say she didn't look good, and I didn't want to remember her that way. It had taken me years to rid myself of the mental image of my dying papa. I wanted to remember Grandma Grace as she looked the last time I saw her alive. My mother, on the other hand, took one look and wailed, "Oh, Grandma, you don't even look like you." Dad, with his arm around Mom's shoulder to hold her up, hadn't seen Grandma in a while. He did his best to comfort her, saying, "Now, honey, you know they look different when the spirit leaves the body." There was no consoling her. Mom practically crawled into the casket with Grandma Grace to investigate, looking for something, anything to offer a sense of closure. She examined every mole and age spot on Grandma's face, the eyeglasses she wore, even lifting the lace handkerchief covering Grandma's hands to peer at her wedding band, while she thought to herself, "My Grandma never had a lace hanky. She kept a wadded Kleenex up her sleeve." "This is not my Grandma," my mother cried aloud. After enduring a 600-mile, 12-hour sob fest, I remember thinking to myself, my mom is having a psychotic break. She's in total denial. Someone call 1-800-CHARTER to get help now. Embarrassed by this scene, I turned to leaf through the pages of the book where those who had attended the visitation had signed in. Page after page of names. None of them recognizable. I didn't find the names of any of my relatives. Not a single great aunt or second cousin in the book. "Mom," I hesitated, "I don't recognize any of these names." Mom turned to face me, and when she did, she noticed the small marquee above my right shoulder, which read, Hazel Nelson. Hazel Nelson. My grandma was Grace Harris. We were in the wrong room looking at the wrong body. "I told you this wasn't my grandma," my mom shouted. The poor little funeral attendant. He tripped all over himself, apologizing for his mistake as he led us to the opposite end of the funeral home, to the other visitation room, where Grandma Grace lay peacefully, dressed in a beautiful autumn-hued suit with no lace hanky in sight. "Grandma, there you are," my mom exclaimed, as relief washed over her. Eventually, her tears subsided, and she began to laugh, imagining Grandma Grace shouting down from her perch in heaven, "Well, for crying in the beer, don't you even recognize me? I'm down here for the love of Pete." I am now the same age that my mom was when we said goodbye to Grandma Grace and Hazel Nelson. I'm in my 40s, my kids are in their teens, and let's face it, I've had to come to terms with the fact that baby days are behind me. I'll never again experience that moment like when they put my second baby in my arms and the nurse handed me that big bundle, and I felt my heart figuratively double in size, expanding my capacity for love. No, that's behind me now. We're quickly approaching high school graduation, college visits, and eventually independence. And it sucks. I want Marty McFly and his DeLorean to come bursting through my subdivision and take me back. But wait, baby days are in my future. Soon enough, my kids will be grown, and they'll marry and start families of their own. And I will be the grandma. With endless patience, utter devotion, and boundless affection. So I look forward to the days ahead when my heart doubles, triples, perhaps even grows tenfold, making more and more room for a grand love for my grandbabies.